Retirement is often seen as a destination, but we believe it's an opportunity to pursue your passions, realize your dreams, and live a purposeful life. Great decisions, incredible lives. Retire with Intention podcast is about more than just money. It's about embracing the things that truly matter, the experiences, the relationships, and the impact you leave behind. Here is your host, John Creekmore.
Hey everybody, welcome back. John here, and I'm so excited just to kind of have some time and chat with you all again this week. And phenomenal, as far as communication back to us last week from the last show. And I know that every single week it's been so cool to be able to hear from you as far as your takeaways and also to hear just about the ways you're applying the things that we talk about. And that's really kind of the vision that we started out a year and a half ago, was just having conversations with people that bring so many different ways of looking at different stages of life. And it's all about making those big decisions that you can live an incredible life, and just kind of figuring out how do we take the things that we do every day, the values that we hold dear, and then finding ways to live it out practically. And sometimes it involves taxes, sometimes it involves estate work, sometimes it involves health. And so just to give you guys a quick preview, one of my dear friends is going to be on the show here in a couple of weeks, and neurosurgeon Jeff will be talking about ways that we can actually improve our brain health. And so looking forward to that conversation. Maybe we'll sit down and do it over coffee and donuts or something else. But today, I'll tell you what, I'm so excited to introduce a new friend of mine, Jandi Kelly, and phenomenal story, and be interested for all of you to listen to her and figure out ways that you can take the values and your history and legacy and be able to package it together in such a way to tell a compelling story. And Jandi, I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here.
Cool. Hey, Jandi, walk us through, if you will, real fast, a little of your background, where you're from, and a little bit of background also as far as what you've created and what it is you do.
Sure, absolutely. So we were just laughing a little bit before the show that I'm from John's neck of the woods. I'm out in the mountains of Oregon right now, but I identify as a South Side Chicago girl. So I grew up on the South Side of Chicago and met my husband down at University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And then from there, I moved into the higher education space where I worked as a director of career planning and leadership development at University of Chicago for a number of years, where I was also at the same time going on to get my master's in higher education at Northwestern. And as I was laughing with John before this, I'm a glutton for punishment. And after 3 years of that, I decided when I was 9 months pregnant to move to Ann Arbor, Michigan to go on to get my Ph.D. in higher education. So I am a lover of lifelong learning, and a lot of the work that I have focused on in my research, I'm a qualitative researcher. So all my research is based on interviews and focus groups. And a lot of my questions are motivated from my time at U of C, serving both alumni and graduate students and having lots of conversations around life meaning, life purpose, identity development. When I was at Michigan for my doctoral studies, I started to engage in a lot of research around topics of legacy and life design. I taught courses in life design, and a lot of my research was motivated. I came across Dan McAdams' work out of Northwestern, where he talked about the life review process and how engaging in the life review process, or beginning to take an inventory of the experiences and people who have meant the most to us, the core experiences that have really shaped our core beliefs, our worldviews, how that can really contribute to our life purpose and meaning and well-being later in life, as well as enhance our relationships today and with generations that we may not even meet. And at that time, I was conducting hundreds of interviews with people on the topics of life purpose and meaning, while at the same time, my parents, just a couple hours away in Chicago, my dad's from a family of 7 where my grandmother passed with Alzheimer's, and 4 of his 7 siblings were diagnosed with either dementia or Alzheimer's, and a 5th with Parkinson's. And so I began to think, as I'm capturing all these life stories of others, I should really begin to do this with my own family. And so when my parents would come to visit Ann Arbor, it started off as simple as me saying, "Hey, Dad, Charlie's down. My oldest is down for a nap. Let's go out on the front porch and tell me about that story about the time when you were in the Marines, or tell me about the time when you had the grasshopper crawling down the nun's face when you were in 5th grade, And so just getting all those stories with my dad. And then eventually my mom said, "Well, what about me? Are you going to get my stories?" And so It started off with my family, and then there was such a positive outpouring of reactions that I began to work on projects beyond my family. And initially, a lot of the projects that I was doing was more recording by voice, kind of like a Ken Burns style, where you would have audio recordings and we'd bring in memorabilia. But the feedback that I really got was that people want to see their loved ones telling their stories. They want to see dad laughing. They want to see that tear running down mom's face as she talks about the day they were born. And so I now have a team of professional videographers, and we create legacy films for families all throughout the country.
Wow, what a phenomenal background. It's so interesting, Janie, too. So many things of life that have significance and impact. It comes out of our own journey, doesn't it? And just to see how you've actually taken your personal experiences and walking through different illnesses and struggles in your own family to be able to memorialize those things with your mom and dad, how it led into something so impactful. The name of your company, A Talk to Remember, that just kind of it. Whenever I was kind of looking over things this last week, I thought that's actually kind of similar to one of my favorite movies of all time, A Walk to Remember. Love the book. Is there any connection between the book and the name of your company?
I will say that I haven't read the book, but I've seen the movie, and
Yeah.
I love the movie. And I will say, when I was thinking about different names for the company, that there was a link back to that movie, in the sense that I thought that it captured such a beautiful story. And when it comes to A Talk to Remember, what I think that really encapsulates for us is that one of the greatest messages that I have for folks, whether they work with a professional life historian to help them create legacy films, or whether they're working with a memoirist, or they're sitting down at the kitchen table and pressing record on the phone, is don't wait too long, because if we don't capture these memories, then we tend not to remember them. They tend not to get passed on. And so I can't tell you the amount of times when people ask me what I do, I get the reaction, I wish I would have done that with my dad, or I wish I didn't wait too long with my mom before cognitive decline really settled in. And so I think that what A Talk to Remember really represents is that so much of what we're doing is partnering with families to sit down and help them preserve the stories that have really composed the fabric of their lives before it's too late, and so that they don't only remember those, but so that future generations will know them as well.
Wow. It's just so phenomenal for us to be talking about this today. And one of the things that we always focus on here at Creamer Wealth is that we believe all people have got phenomenal things they want to do. And there's things that are significant to them. And whenever we're able to take their core values and take their legacy, as far as their upbringing, what they were brought into, and then also think about where do they want to go in the future, we simply align their finances with those things, and they can accomplish phenomenal things that, from a multi-generational standpoint, is so impactful. And yet, so many people really they struggle in bringing together those core values. They struggle in bringing together the stories that's really put into place those core values. And it really seems like when we're talking about either retirement planning, and Janie, I don't like the word retirement, because we all know what it means, but it's just that next stage of life. We're doing something different, right? But when we're talking about that next stage of life and be able to say, how do we communicate? How do we teach to the next generation the things that are significant and important? How do we actually tell the stories as the fabric of our family? It really seems like storytelling can be a big part of that. Have you seen that over the years?
Oh, absolutely. And really quick, when you mentioned that you don't like the word retirement, it recalls one of my professors at Michigan. She was entering into what she would call her encore career, and she called it rewirement. It's a period of rewirement, and we're
I love that.
rewiring our brains. And yeah, no, absolutely. When it comes to storytelling, I think that it can really bringing storytelling into the retirement planning process can really enhance it in a number of ways, both for individuals and also for families. And at the individual level, we've talked a little bit about how individuals can, one of the most challenging aspects of retirement that we'll often see, and I'm sure you talk about a lot here, and whether it's retirement from a professional career or whether it's retirement from being with your family all the time, you're moving into an empty nest stage, is this loss of purpose or contribution. And there's a lot of research when it comes to storytelling and how storytelling affects the next generation, that as we begin to tell our stories, not only are those stories affecting those down the road, but it also can provide a direct connection to our own sense of purpose and provide a greater sense of a greater roadmap for how we want to live with intentionality and how we spend our later years. And so as we begin to recall our most meaningful moments and the people that we've touched over our lives, what we see is that our lives really have purpose. And what storytellers get to sense as well is that my story matters. I feel seen and heard. My life has been full of meaning. And our stories are also a treasure trove of insights for the future. So, as Faulkner famously said, the past is not dead, it's not even past. And a lot of times, to go to the notion of rewirement again, when we think about retirement, there's so many endless opportunities as a way to rewire our world or to rethink about the ways that we want to engage. But it can be hard to know where you're headed if you don't know where you've been. And when we carry our life lessons and experiences with us and begin to reflect on those, and a lot of the times we haven't been afforded the opportunity to really sit back and take inventory of our life when we're busy raising kids or working a 9 to 5. And thinking about how those life stories can really help us make good decisions and build rewarding futures, even in the twilight years, is super, super important. And it can inspire us to think about how we want to interact with and impact others, with whom we want to invest our time, what we want to be remembered for. And when it comes to affecting future generations as well, Wall Street Journal recently published an article indicating on the top regrets of adult children. And at the top of the list was the stat that only 1 in 3 adult children know the stories behind their parents' accomplishments. And so that is something that adult children are really, really looking for. And it's one of those things where when we can help storytellers tell their stories, we're not only helping bring that sense of catharsis and peace that, oh, my story is going to be remembered and passed on, but we're also helping the next generation also know that, my kids are going to get to meet my parents and my future grandkids are going to get to meet my parents. So there's that component as well. And then there's also a lot of research on the benefits of engaging with the next generation as far as storytelling when it comes to building resilience as well. And so, for example, I've had several folks approach me about partnering with them on stories, and a big motivation is that they want to be able to share with the next generation the different challenges that they've overcome in life, to be a beam of inspiration as well, and to let future grandkids know that when you're going through a hard time, there are these universal experiences. And as you mentioned, like sometimes folks don't think that they've lived the most extraordinary lives. That's something that I'll hear sometimes is, I haven't traveled the world, or I didn't have like a huge career, and I don't really know what stories I want to tell. But it's those universal experiences of the struggles we had in marriage and how we worked on it, and we made, the different sacrifices that we've made over time, or the challenges that we've had raising kids, or how we really worked through a hard period of grief in our life that future generations are really able to relate to. And, I'll even see it with my own parents when they come and visit that, my son really struggles with a speech impediment, and he struggles with some different reading aspects in school. And my dad had a lot of those same challenges. And so the two of them, they call each other bunkmates. They sleep in the same room when they come to visit. And, my dad will tell my son about the different challenges he had and how he worked through them. And the two of them will go on walks together. And then before you know it, my son is like, I'm excited for speech this week. Mikey did it. I'm going to keep working on it. And so there's lots of little anecdotes like that we see like that over time.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people are listening right now saying, that sounds like something I really need to be doing, but there's probably this that's going to keep me from doing it, or there's this hurdle that I have to get over. I'm not sure where to start. Are there some common obstacles that people kind of walk through when it comes to actually recording their journey?
Yeah, I would say that when it comes to the challenges that folks have, there's usually like 3 overarching ones that I'll see. And so the first was that I've tried to capture our family stories, but the outcome isn't as expected. So I was working with a client recently where she's like, I've spent so many months compiling all of our family letters over the decades into a book, and I can't get anyone to read it. The grandkids don't want to read it. Like my kids aren't sitting down to read it. And so thinking about how to create a legacy project that your family wants to engage with. I've had a number of other folks say, I've sat down with my grandma or grandpa and I have like 10 hours of recorded stories, but what do I do with them? Like, what do I do now that I have those stories? Who's going to listen to them? I think another thing that comes up is technical skills. So like I mentioned, a lot of times people really want to be able to capture their loved one where they can see them telling their favorite stories, but they don't know how to necessarily produce films. And then the biggest, like most common one is that it's a daunting task. I'm wrapping up a project right now with a couple who is celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. So, collectively between the two of them, we're looking, there's about over 80 years of memories that we're capturing. And folks will say, where do you even begin in capturing 80 years of memories? What are the different themes that we're going to pull through? Or I can't find time to dedicate to this process. Like a lot of times adult children want to work on this with their parents, but they have full-time jobs. They're at soccer games on the weekend. They might live in different states. So those are some of the challenges that come up. And then I think that one of the main things that we do that I think our clients would say is we really try to make this as enjoyable and stress-free a process for the clients as possible. And so much of that is just walking them through this process and breaking it down to get a clear sense of what an ideal project looks like for them. What is the intended purpose? So the message that they want to share, how do they want to be remembered? So for example, like sometimes when I work with families, they're often small business owners. And I was recently working on a project where they really wanted at the core of this project to pass on the message that we are servant leaders, both in our business, in our communities, with our families, and in all areas of life. And so that was a theme that ran throughout the entire project, that we captured not only their memories and renditions of how they were servant leaders, but also their children's memories of that and the different ways that their children are passing that on to the next generation. So I think that really crafting that vision for the project and then breaking down the logistics along the way. So we're helping them think about, as you're going through your boxes and boxes of memorabilia, what are the must-haves? Like, what do we really need to focus on? Another family that we just worked with, it was so cool. We helped them digitize over 90 reels of film that date back to the 1920s. And we're integrating all those films into their home, into their legacy films that we're creating. And I think one of the neatest things about these projects is that so many times, we can go through piles and piles of photos of our grandparents, great-grandparents, but we don't know the stories behind those photos. And so what we're really doing is helping families identify what are the main stories that are integral to your family history, and then helping them identify the memorabilia that's going to help bring those stories to life. And so we break it down into a very manageable process. And then a lot of it is also just thinking about who's going to be involved. Are we involving the kids? Are we involving the grandkids? What's the timeline? Is there a sense of urgency for any reason? So I think that the biggest challenges that folks usually encounter is just the looming, daunting sense of how big these projects can be, the technical aspects, and then also like, once I have these stories, what do I do with them? And that's something that we love with partnering them on, and we help break down for them along the way.
Yeah. And you're right. It seems like it could be such a huge project that might discourage somebody from even starting once they think about it. I know myself, Stacy and I, we have all of these books of mementos, of all these videos, and now that we have the advent of these wonderful little recorders that we all have now, that seems to be growing exponentially. And then try to bring it down just to what is the most significant things. Man, Jandi, I'm sure it has to help so much to have a guide like yourself and those that work with you have gone through this before to be able to say, hey, let's focus on the most important elements you want to cover, then let's find the items that really communicate that well.
Well, absolutely. And I think too, usually when clients will start with us, they'll say, I don't know how you're going to do this. Like, I just don't know how this is going to happen. And what we do is we spend a lot of time. We only work on a handful of projects throughout the year because it's a very engaged, a very hands-on service. We're actually going to the individuals and conducting the interviews on site. We go to their location of choice. So, and it's usually at least about 3 months per project by the time we have have some preparatory interviews in the beginning to get a sense of what are the stories they want to tell, help guide them through the memorabilia process, and then actually go out, conduct the filming, which is usually over 2 days. And then there's the whole editing process as well. And so I think that one of the most important aspects of that is when we think about just getting through that memorabilia, What we stay away from is, that 3-hour wedding video that you watch like the first year and then you watch it again on your 25th anniversary and maybe again on your 50th. So what we do is each of our films is dedicated to a life chapter of personal meaning. And so that can be some typical ones, our family of origin and growing up. And then also our love story, a letter to our children. We just did a really cool project where there were 4 sons, and the 4 sons actually came to the interviews and they wrote a letter to our parents, and it was a dedication to their parents about the different values and lessons and gratitudes they have for their parents that they want to pass on to the next generation. And so what we do is each of our films is only about 8 to 10 minutes in length, and it really distills the highlights from these longer interviews that we're conducting on site, so that when you have these films at the end, you're not just sitting and listening to, someone go on and on and on for about 3 hours. It's really, what are those core stories that you want to capture? And then we also say after like 2 to 3 days of interviews, we could have 8 to 12 hours of recorded life stories. We give the family the full recording so that they have all of those interviews and all of those stories. But there's these showcase pieces that we produce for them on a website, and they can save to their phones, they can share on social media, they can send to family and friends. It's like this couple that's celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. It's the day after Christmas, and so they're having a big family viewing party and at their annual Christmas party, and everyone's going to come together. And it's a lot easier for grandkids to sit and watch several films that are 8 to 10 minutes in length than a 3-hour clip. So it's really helping them, guiding them through what is the essence and the core stories that we really want to capture on your behalf.
Everybody, talking about Jandi Kelly right here. Make sure you check out the show notes and links so as far as to a number of different resources to talk to remember. Website and also information from Jandi's website is there, and just some phenomenal tools and resources. So make sure you check that out. A lot of things Jandi's been talking about, you're able to find some resources available there. And I was thinking about, we have holidays coming up. We always host at our house really a lot of different family members, and so we'll have my grandchildren there. I'll have my children there from different parts of the country. I'll have my siblings that'll be there, and Stacy's siblings will be there. Then we have all the grandparents will be there, and it's a huge, crazy crew of people. And it's great getting everybody together, especially in this multi-generational way in which we're living life together, in which we're doing huge, let's say, celebrations together. And yet I do see a point in which we have these personal stories. And I think that as we document these and bring these together, in my mind, Janie, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like that actually plays a lot into this role of strengthening family bonds across generations. Have you seen it play out that way?
Absolutely. I think that, I often tell folks that if you want to make your great aunt or your grandparents' day this Thanksgiving, ask them about their school years, or ask them about their time, ask them about their wedding day, or ask them about a challenge that you're going through in your life and how they might handle it. Because a lot of the times, when we see folks, especially in their later years, research demonstrates that a sense of purpose and meaning and contribution can decline with age at times. But what the life history research shows is that by engaging in stories and engaging in storytelling with younger generations actually fosters a sense of generativity. And so what generativity refers to is the well-being of future generations. And so when we share our life stories, we're promoting generativity through the acts of passing on wisdom and also cultivating, as I mentioned earlier, resilience in younger generations. And so what we can see, so Emory University's Family Narrative Lab, for example, they have found through a number of studies that youth who learn their family stories and families who are more open about emotionally trying times, the youth from those families demonstrate higher coping, they have higher self-esteem and social relationships, higher quality friendships, less anxiety, and they're also more likely to turn to their family members in challenging times and approach them with different challenges that they have, because they know that's a space that family is willing to talk about those things, and they're inviting those conversations as well. And so that's definitely something that we see. And when it comes to wisdom, there's an opportunity for younger generations to take these universal lessons with them and draw upon these stories as inspirations and strength in challenging times. And so that aspect of generational wisdom and generativity and thinking about not only providing a sense of purpose for the storyteller in impacting future generations, but also in real time. Like I'm in Oregon right now and my family's in Chicago and they're going to be out here later this week. And when they come, they're 2,000 miles away. Like time is precious. And we're at a stage right now where a number of my friends as well, one of my really good friends unexpectedly lost her dad a year ago. And when we talked about the work that I do, she was one of the ones who was like, I really wish that I would have engaged. I would have done this with my own dad. And I think that what we see when storytellers, when we ask with intentionality about those moments in people's lives that stand out, it also provides such fertile ground for bonding in the moment. And so it's not only just preserving these stories for down the road, but the time that we have with our loved ones, especially older generations, is precious. And so thinking about how you can really use that time to really engage with them and learn more about their history is something that is just to be celebrated. And I think that's one of the things that keeps me doing this work is at the end of a project, we have a film reveal. And when we reveal these films to a client and they're able to witness their most important memories and people captured in film with also photos of that time and different sentiments from their children on those times. It's a really, really touching experience. And I've even had one couple who the storyteller, the grandma, she went to an all-girls high school and very much valued her female relationships. And she dedicated a film to how much her women friendships have meant to her over time. And she had a viewing party with her friends.
Oh,
and so
wow.
the fact that they were able to come over and they were able to relive these stories together and really, celebrate that time together, it just brings so much joy in the moment that, yes, it affects future generations, but it's also a cause of celebration for the storyteller in real time as well.
I know I have in my office a shadow box of some mementos from World War I from a family member, and I have some stories that were handed down from generation to generation to generation in their own words. And I'm sure the stories maybe loosely resemble the actual fact of what had happened. And so, but I know that that was a way of memorializing things from, decades and centuries ago. And so I know of technology, I know things change, trend lines change. What future trends do you foresee in the field of legacy storytelling, especially for retirees, maybe for small business owners or families?
Yeah, so I often partner with financial advising firms because the advisors who reach out to me are advisors who not only want to help preserve their clients' financial legacies, but they also know that these non-financial legacies are so important. And, there was some recent research conducted by Wells Fargo and Edward Jones indicating that 70% of retirees and 83% of adult children indicate that their life memories, values, and stories are the most important aspect of their legacy planning. And I think that what these advisors have come to see is that it's always beneficial to build relationships with your current client, but if they can build relationships with the next generation and begin to demonstrate that they're not only stewards of financial wealth, but that they're also stewards of their family history, that they can not only partner with their clients in a very meaningful way, but it also informs the knowledge that they bring to their financial planning because they know that family history. They have a better sense of those core values that are informing their investment strategies as well. And so something that I've seen advisors bring up to clients a number of times that we partner with is this notion of gifting while living, because a number of a number of individuals, when it comes to planned giving, are trying to think of ways outside of the box that they can give in a meaningful way that resonates with them deeper than a monetary gift. And so for some families, that may be taking the entire family to Disney World. For other families, something that we're seeing is that they want to capture these life stories as a way to gift their family with these stories, and as a way to gift their future legacies with their future generations with these legacy stories as well. And so I think something that we're starting to see in the area of non-financial legacy planning is really folks thinking about using part of their planned giving funds to capture these stories as well. And then something else that we've had brought up by a number of estate firms is thinking about estate films and creating estate films as an impactful accompaniment to the traditional legal documents, where matriarchs and patriarchs can really elaborate upon the motives behind their estate plan, and to really talk in further depth about the philanthropic and family values that they want to pass on. Because there can be a lot of power in the recorded voice versus solely reading a legal document to you. And most importantly, which I'm sure you've seen in your work working with investments as well, is a way to capture parents' wishes to help remove complicated discussions down the road amongst heirs, especially during emotionally trying times. And so it's an extra measure that families can take to set up the next generation for success, and remove a lot of complications that can happen with inheritances as well.
Interesting. Jandi, all of a sudden I thought, I'm sure people have got so many questions, and people have been so really impressed as far as just with the thought of being challenged to think of a different way of memorializing those things that are so important to them. I want to thank you so much for the time spent today with us, and brought a ton of value. Everybody, please check out the show notes. More information will be listed there, connections, website links, and everything else. And so, but Jandi, before we go, any final thoughts that you have that we've not covered already?
Yeah, I think that I touched upon this briefly at the beginning, but I partner with families in creating legacy documentary films, and those are very special, very meaningful projects, but it's not the only way to capture your family stories. And my biggest message to folks is to capture the stories before they're too late. Whether it is sitting down when you have grandma and grandpa over for dinner on Sunday night, and you have a table topic conversation and you pose a question and you record it on your phone, whether it is if you live in different parts of the country and you have a Friday happy hour Zoom date with mom, and you sit down and you press record and you just ask her to tell you, that 10-minute story of your trip together to New York City when you were in your 20s, so anything that you can do to capture these stories, you're never going to regret it. And while, I absolutely love helping families do this in a very professional way that can, their kids and grandkids want to watch it time and time again, they can also use it to benefit their businesses if they're small business owners. You don't have to partner with someone professionally. You can do this in a lot of ways on your own. And I'll actually, if there are folks who are interested in doing this, I think that Bill Damon out of Stanford, he's a developmental psychologist, and he wrote a book called A Round of Golf with My Father. And it's about his own memoir. And he takes folks through about how you can really capture your life story in your own unique way, and the different aspects that you might want to emphasize, and really emphasizing stories. Yes, we all have troubling times, but trying to emphasize those stories as tales of resistance, tales of hope and inspiration, and thinking about the aspects of your life that you really want to pass on to the next generation. And those are things, if you're a writer, you can write those down. If you want to record them on audio yourself, you can do that also. So I think there's a lot of ways that everyone can do this, and you're never going to regret having mom and dad's stories captured by audio, by video, or in a book.
Well said. Jandi, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Great. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening. And we'll be back here next week again for another episode of Great Decisions, Incredible Lives. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for listening to the Great Decisions, Incredible Lives, Retire with Intention podcast with host John Creekmer. Follow us on social media, visit our website, and join our community of like-minded individuals redefining retirement and living incredible lives. Please leave us a review and share our podcast with others who may benefit. We wish you a future filled with purpose, fulfillment, and the joy of living your incredible life in retirement.